Hey, today I've put together a selection of interesting Reddit threads for you. I hope you enjoy them. Give it a like and subscribe, and let's get started. It seems I have a twin sister. First, I want to explain where these suspicions even came from. I realize this whole story sounds like the plot of the movie The Parent Trap, but please don't be too quick to label me a nutcase. I'll start with what I know for sure. My father left the family when I was 3 years old. As far as I can tell, there was no violence or abuse, but the breakup was still very messy. Apparently, by that point, they literally couldn't stand each other anymore. My mom told me about it only once, and I think she later regretted even bringing it up. I'm 24 now, and in my two earliest memories, there's a little girl standing next to me. In the first memory, we're sitting in a room at my maternal grandparents' house. So, when someone asks us how old we are, we, too shy to talk to adults, simply hold up three fingers. I remember that moment very clearly. Probably partly because that was the first time in my life I'd held up my fingers that way. It was a new and unusual sensation, but most importantly, there was a girl next to me. I tried to find a reasonable explanation for this. I asked about the neighbors, my grandparents' acquaintances, and other children who might have visited their home, but no one in the neighborhood had a daughter my age, so it turns out this girl simply couldn't have come from anywhere. She also appears in another memory, which most likely dates back to around the same period. I hadn't remembered it for a long time, but recently it unexpectedly resurfaced. I currently work in marketing. There's an old indoor sports complex in our city. It has two fields that can be used for soccer or hockey, a gym, offices, old arcade machines, a small snack bar, and a kids' room. The complex had been practically closed for a long time, but before the pandemic, its owners were planning to revitalize it and attract visitors again. Our agency was supposed to help them with advertising, so about a year ago, I went there to take some photos. As soon as I stepped inside, this memory literally washed over me. I remembered how my grandmother used to take us to the children's playroom, which was located inside this complex. Just the two of us. I remembered the setting very clearly. The lights were off almost everywhere, so the huge indoor fields looked like some kind of dark ocean. The only lights were on in the gym. Maybe grandma went there for therapeutic exercises or physical therapy, and she left us in the children's room while she was gone. Anyway, I'm sure the same girl from my memory about the three fingers was with me. After that, the thought of her stuck in my head for a long time. However, I didn't really look into it. I decided it was probably just some random girl I don't remember anything about now, especially since she's not in any of our family photos, and none of our relatives have ever mentioned her. But then I started thinking, it's exactly the same with my father. We have almost no photos of him. No one ever talks about him. I don't even know where he is now or what's become of him. What if after they split up, he took my sister with him, and mom left me behind? I want to get to the bottom of all this because one of the last things my grandma said before she died gave me goosebumps. She died last fall. Not long before that, we were talking through the window of her house. I was wearing a mask and keeping my distance so I wouldn't accidentally infect her. Grandma already knew she didn't have much time left, and by then she wasn't thinking as clearly as she used to. Still, she suddenly said, "How much you've grown. Back then the two of you were so tiny." I automatically asked, what do you mean, the two of you? But she immediately clammed up and didn't answer, as if she suddenly remembered she let slip something she wasn't supposed to talk about. After her death, my mom and I helped clear out the house. I started looking through old photos, many of which I was seeing for the first time. I didn't find anything particularly new there, except for one detail. In the background of three photos was that very same girl. In one photo, she's swimming in a pool. In another, she's running in a park. And in the third, she's hunting for Easter eggs near a church. Is that her? I don't know. There wasn't a photo of my father in the house either. And if the family really was trying to hide the existence of my possible sister, it makes sense why she isn't in any of the family photos next to me. But could my grandmother have kept a few photos after all, in which the girl happened to be in the frame by accident? Or maybe she left them there on purpose, but in a way that no one would suspect anything. Where should I even start? Talk to my mom? I'm afraid she'll think I've lost my mind. I have a stepdad, but we aren't particularly close. He came into our family when I was already a teenager. Maybe he knows something, though I have no idea if my mom ever told him about this. I keep feeling like my father and my sister are out there somewhere. Do you think I really have a reason to believe that? Or am I just connecting random memories and details? Update. The first thing I decided to do was check my birth certificate. If it only lists one child, then I'll casually ask my mom who that girl is in the old photos. It seems I have a twin sister. Part 2. The resolution. A huge thank you to everyone for your support. Almost all of you advised me to find my birth certificate first. As soon as I had some free time, I did just that. It turned out I was born as an only child. I don't have a twin, but the girl from my memories, the very one who might have been in those old photos, still wouldn't leave me alone. Finally, I decided enough was enough with the guesswork and followed another piece of your advice. I talked to my mom directly. I managed to get her to come out to dinner with me. To be honest, I had to work hard to make sure she didn't bring my stepdad along. My girlfriend wasn't home that evening, so I told her I just wanted to spend some time alone together, just mom and son. During dinner, I finally asked her, "Do I have a sister?" Her reaction turned out to be completely different from what I expected. She wasn't startled, and she didn't start denying everything. On the contrary, it even seemed to me that she was glad I finally asked about it. "Why are you asking?" she replied. I told her everything I told you about my childhood memories, my grandmother's strange remark, and the photos I found at her house. Mom was silent for a few seconds, then said, "That's your half-sister on your father's side." She asked, "Are you ready to hear the whole truth?" Then she told me the story of her relationship with my father and finally filled in all the gaps. And the story, to be honest, turned out to be pretty awful. My mom and I were like his second secret family. My father was married to another woman, my sister's mother. What's more, our families were friends, yet he was having an affair with my mom. And as it turned out, Medachana, my sister, and I were born less than a month apart. Mom knew from the very beginning that he had a wife and a family. She understood that their relationship was secret, but she was fine with everything. So the affair continued, and Grandma looked after both of us at the time. That's where my memories come from, and those photos were taken during that very period. When we were about 3 years old, my sister's mother found out about everything. She demanded that their family move away and completely cut off all contact with us. That's exactly what they did. My mom was very upset because she was perfectly content with the way things had been. She took their departure as a painful breakup. After that, my mom and my grandmother, the only people who knew who my father was, decided not to tell me anything. However, there is at least one positive aspect to the story. According to my mom, all these years my father has been helping us out financially, little by little. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but his help was enough for us to live quite comfortably. Then my mom told me their names and immediately said that if I decided to get in touch with them, she didn't want anything to do with it. But I don't even know yet if I'll do that. I need to think it all through calmly, so I'm not gonna rush into anything. Still, I looked for my sister on social media and found her page. When I saw her photos, I couldn't hold back and started crying. More than 20 years have passed, but I recognize her right away, so she's not my twin. But I really do have a sister. She exists, and she's exactly the girl I've remembered all this time. Thank you to everyone who supported me and helped me make up my mind to find out the truth. Every evening around 8:30 p.m., a bell starts ringing somewhere nearby. The ringing lasts about 30 seconds. It's definitely not a church. There aren't any churches in the area at all. Besides, church bells sound completely different. A doorbell, a train whistle, or a musical triangle. It doesn't sound like any of those either. From the sound of it, it's more like a handbell, but not as melodious as those in bell ensembles. It's something in between a regular handbell and a large cowbell. I can't say that this ringing bothers me. It's just that I've been hearing it for several years now, and I've become curious about where it's coming from. From time to time, I've tried to find information online. I thought maybe it was some kind of religious ritual or local custom, but I never found anything that fit. Perhaps there's no particular meaning to it at all, but the ringing occurs every day at exactly the same time, so it's hard to believe it's a coincidence. I have an idea what it might be. I live in the northwestern United States in a fairly multicultural suburb. The mystery of the evening bell has been solved. A couple of days ago, I wrote about the strange bell ringing I hear every evening. Many people advised me to try to find the source, so my daughters and I decided to conduct a little investigation. I have 3 daughters, so we split up and pretty quickly pinpointed the general direction of the sound. On the very first evening, we found the right street And yesterday we even tracked it down to a specific house. It turned out that it wasn't a call to prayer, an alarm, or any kind of special ritual at all. A young boy with autism is the one ringing the bell. When we approached the house, he was outside with his mom. I'm so glad she wasn't upset by our curiosity and calmly explained everything. According to her, from time to time, one of the neighbors also comes out when they hear the sound, trying to figure out where the ringing is coming from every evening. Her son simply adores bells and little bells, but they live in a regular residential neighborhood, so his parents, of course, can't let him ring the big bell whenever he wants. At home, he has small bells and other similar items, and they've set a specific time for the big bell. Every evening, he goes outside for about 30 seconds, rings his bell, and then goes to get ready for bed. Now that I know the reason, it all seems perfectly logical. My middle daughter is also on the autism spectrum. She's quite independent, but she too has her own quirks, habits, and rituals. Now she wants to give this boy a little bell for Christmas, so for the next month or so, we'll probably be agonizing over choosing the perfect gift. I'm so glad I decided to ask this question here. Thanks to your advice, we went looking for the source of the sound and ended up meeting a wonderful family. I'm sorry if the resolution wasn't the most mysterious or exciting, but personally I really liked it. My landlord is keeping tabs on me. I'm 26 and this is the first time I've lived on my own. The landlord gave me a bad vibe right from the start. He's around 50 and he's never been shy about commenting on my appearance or making various remarks directed at me. When I first moved in, he sternly warned me several times not to touch the two smoke detectors in the apartment. One is in the bedroom, the other in the hallway. He explained that they're directly connected to the fire department, and if I try to remove or open them, the alarm will go off immediately. The one in the bedroom has always seemed especially strange to me. It constantly makes some kind of noise, most often at night. Sometimes there's a whirring sound coming from it like a radio-controlled car, and sometimes a quiet muffled squeak. Once I mentioned this to the landlord, he replied that there was nothing to worry about, and if the detector started bothering me even more, I should call him. But over time, other strange things started happening in the apartment. I had a growing feeling that something wasn't right here. At the same time, the people around me kept trying to convince me that I was just imagining things, because this was my first time living alone and I was being too cautious about everything. The first strange incident happened even before I moved in. While I was doing some renovations, I accidentally bought the wrong shade of paint and decided to test it on a small section of the bedroom wall. The color turned out to be too bright. A few days later, the landlord was talking on the phone with my parents and suddenly started getting upset that I painted the bedroom a horrible shade of pink. He even asked if I'd lost my mind. I hadn't let him into the apartment, so I had absolutely no idea how he even found out about it. And in the end, I convinced myself that he must have seen me with paint-stained clothes and somehow figured it out. Then things got even stranger. Last January, I went to stay with my parents for the whole day. When I got home, I immediately sensed that something in the apartment had changed. I couldn't figure out exactly what. No one was inside. And at first glance, everything was in its place. But when I went into the bedroom a second time, I noticed that one of the drawers under the bed was pulled out. I had absolutely no memory of leaving it open. Still, I decided again that I'd just forgotten, mainly because my parents said I must have pulled it out myself and not noticed. In the end, I even felt embarrassed that I'd brought it up at all. A few months later in the summer, my friends and I organized a gaming session on Discord. Around 4 a.m., I finally left the call and went to my bedroom. There I saw that the drawers where I keep my underwear were open. That's when I really got scared. I immediately called my mom. She lives nearby. At that moment, I wasn't even sure if anyone else was in the apartment. After that, I installed a door chain and bought an alarm system, which I turn on when I'm home. I suspected the landlord had a spare key, but now at least he wouldn't be able to sneak into the apartment unnoticed while I was there. The problem is that this doesn't protect the apartment at all when I'm not there. Sometimes when I come home, I notice that the furniture in the bedroom is arranged slightly differently than before, but my family always says that I must have moved something myself and just forgot about it. Now I feel so awkward bringing it up again that I usually just keep quiet. I realize how crazy all this sounds, but is it possible to hide a camera inside a smoke detector? Could I call the fire department's non-emergency number and ask someone to check the detectors, explaining that one of them is making strange noises? I just want to live peacefully in my own apartment again. The thought that someone might have come in here while I was away, or even been here before while I was asleep, terrifies me. Sometimes when I think about it, I just want to burst into tears. Please, can you tell me what to do? Edited. I really didn't expect so many people to respond, so I'll try to clarify a few things right away. First, my parents love and support me. I just talked to my mom and told her everything that's been happening. I don't think she was intentionally trying to make me doubt my own feelings. My parents have no connection to the landlord and don't have any contact with him. My mom is very worried right now, and if she had the chance, she'd probably have already gone to confront him in person. The landlord himself lives in another city. He owns several apartments here, but he still comes here several times a week. I'm in Germany, so unfortunately, advice regarding US laws doesn't apply to me. Sorry I didn't clarify that right away. For now, here's my plan. Tomorrow morning, I'll call the fire department and ask them to check the smoke detectors. And on Monday, a friend of our family is coming over to change the locks. I really want to take those detectors down myself and see what's inside. But I'm not very tall, and I don't have a stepladder right now, so I won't be able to reach them. Update from March 17th. Good morning. A huge thank you to everyone who's leaving advice and messaging me privately. This morning has been very stressful, so please forgive me if I can't reply to everyone. I called the fire department and they told me that my detectors aren't connected to their system at all. The employee was also very suspicious that there were signs of tampering specifically on the detector in the bedroom. By the way, there's also a smoke detector in the storage room. It looks exactly like the one in the hallway. The fire department advised me to find a friend or relative who knows about electrical work and ask them to take the detector apart and see what's inside. According to them, something is definitely wrong here. Even if there isn't a camera in there, someone still opened up the smoke detector and didn't bother to put it back together properly. My mom's best friend is an electrician. Today, I'll try to get in touch with him and ask him to come over as soon as possible. If he can't make it today, he'll be in the area on Monday anyway. I might have to wait a few more days. In any case, I'll definitely write as soon as I have any news. Thank you so much for your support. Update. My mom's friend won't be able to come until Monday, so there probably won't be any updates until then. I've been advised not to remove or take apart the detector myself, especially if there really is something wrong with it. If at any point I feel unsafe at home, I can stay overnight at my parents' or my sister's place. I also want to explain to those who are asking why I don't just remove the sensor myself. It belongs to the landlord. And as some have pointed out, there's a chance the sensor isn't installed correctly in the first place. If that's the case, the landlord might run into trouble, but if I remove it myself, they could end up blaming me. Then I'd have to pay for both the new sensor and the technician's labor to install it. I don't have any extra money right now to take that risk. I'm fine. Nothing strange has happened since I posted this. I think I'll finally get some answers on Monday. Although another curious thing happened. My neighbor and I got to talking and the conversation turned to safety. She knows almost nothing about what's been happening to me, but she suddenly said, "You should change your locks." The advice itself is quite ordinary, but in my situation, it sounded all too relevant. Update from March 23rd. Sorry I didn't write right away. Today was a very difficult and nerve-wracking day. From what I understand, according to my mom's acquaintance, everything is fine with the fire alarm now, but other circumstances have come to light. I don't know yet exactly what I'm allowed to share, so I'd rather not take any chances. A police investigation is currently underway. For now, I've taken the necessary precautions and I'm safe. I'm sorry I can't give you the full resolution that many of you were hoping for. Perhaps someday I'll be able to tell the whole story. In the meantime, I want to thank each and every one of you once again. Thanks to your comments, I stopped doubting myself, decided to look into everything, and finally put my own safety first. I hope you're all doing well despite these crazy times. Thank you so much once again. Take care of yourselves. Update. Many years later, I happened to log back into this account by chance and decided that I really should share how this story ended. I'll say right away, no, the landlord wasn't spying on me. But thanks to this whole situation, it turned out that someone had indeed tampered with the smoke detectors or tried to remove them without consulting the professionals who installed them. Whether it was the landlord himself or a previous tenant, I never found out. In my last update, I mentioned a police investigation that turned out to be related to what was happening. Now the case is finally closed, and I've had enough time to recover so I can tell you what happened back then. It turned out that my ex-boyfriend was stalking me. One night, while I was still regularly posting updates to my first post, he tried to break into my apartment. I was home at the time. Fortunately, I managed to lock myself in the living room and scare him off, and he left. By that point, an investigation was already underway against him, and this incident was added to the rest of the case file. After that, I could no longer talk about what was happening online. The police also had reason to believe that he might have broken into my apartment before while I was away. I still don't know if he had been in there before that night. I can't rule out the possibility that the apartment's owner was involved in some of the strange occurrences after all. After everything that happened, I finally stopped feeling safe at home. The lockdown, constant fear, and ongoing investigation took a heavy toll on my mental health. My post-traumatic stress disorder worsened to the point that in 2022, I had to be hospitalized for a while. Since then, I've made a lot of changes in my life and worked very hard on myself. I no longer live alone. I moved to a different place and became much closer to my parents. I'm doing much better now. I'm sorry this update is coming so many years later. The investigation went to trial and the whole process dragged on for a very long time. Even after the case was finally over, it was still hard for me for a long time. But thanks to the support of my loved ones and therapy, I was able to get through it. The last few years haven't been easy, but now thankfully, I'm in much better shape. And yes, my ex was punished for what he did. The smoke detectors were finally fixed too. I feel like a jerk for no longer letting my son's neighbors stay over at our house. My son Alex, who's 4, has a best friend named Jay. He's 7 and lives right across the street. About a year ago, I suggested we all get together at our house to play. His mom happily agreed and said something like, "Great, then I'll be able to focus on my older daughter and help her with her homework." My son was absolutely thrilled with the idea. We prepared some games in advance, ordered pizza, and the kids had a wonderful time. But what was originally intended to be occasional weekend get-togethers gradually turned into regular free childcare for a child from my home country. Meanwhile, I work part-time. My husband works full-time. I'm still in college myself, and we don't have any help from relatives or friends. We live far away from all our loved ones. For about 6 weeks in a row, Jay would show up at our place every weekend without warning and stay for 3 to 5 hours. If we had plans of our own and he had to leave, my 4-year-old son would throw a tantrum. He doesn't understand why his best friend can't stay. About a month ago, I ran into Jay's mom by chance and we chatted a bit. I told her how overwhelmed I am with school right now and that I have important midterms coming up that I need to prepare for seriously. She never once offered to take Alex to her place to help me out, and that's fine. I didn't ask her directly, and she doesn't owe me anything. But then something happened that made me decide I'd had enough. The following week, Alex and Jay were playing outside with my husband while I was studying for my exams. A little while later, it started raining heavily, so they decided to come inside our house. It was around 1 p.m. I told Jay that he needed to ask his mom for permission first before staying with us. To be honest, I wanted him to go home because I needed to study, and my husband was about to meet up with friends. They'd been planning this get-together for several weeks. Since his friends live in another city, Jay called his mom and she said it was fine. He could stay with us because she had things to do anyway. She runs her own business, and weekends are usually her busiest days. I was completely shocked by her response, but I didn't want to upset my son. Besides, I felt bad for Jay himself, so I didn't say anything and let him stay. Now I realized that was my mistake. What was supposed to be a short stay turned into a whole day. It wasn't until around 9 p.m. that Jay's older sister came to pick him up. As it turned out, Jay's mom, her husband, and their older daughter had gone to some event she was organizing and spent the whole day there, and no one even thought to let me know. By the way, Jay's grandparents live literally a 5-minute walk from us, and she could have dropped him off at their place at any time. Of course, I texted and called her throughout the day. She replied that she was working and that they'd be back for Jay soon. To be honest, I was furious. She didn't even come herself to pick up her son and thank me for looking after her child all day. Instead, she just sent a message saying thanks, and that was it. After that incident, I no longer allowed Jade to come over to our place. I feel like I was simply taken advantage of without even a basic show of gratitude. So girl, why did you even tell him to ask his mom if he could stay if you didn't want him to stay in the first place? You created this problem for yourself. Your husband should have just walked the boy home and said, I'm leaving, so here's your son, take him. And stop letting him into your house if it makes you uncomfortable. His mother is clearly not the type of person who picks up on hints. You're a fool. Stop letting people take advantage of your kindness. And in my opinion, the age difference between a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old is still pretty big. Well, here are the verdicts. Reddit says, you're not a jerk. My wife and I both received a message at the same time from an unknown number saying that someone had pooped. At that very moment, I was changing our daughter's diaper. Should I be worried? My wife and I were in our daughter's room changing her diaper. While we were talking about how the little one had pooped, we both received a message at the same time from an unknown number. Hi, welcome to Poop Direct. Now you'll receive notifications every time someone poops. We hope you'll enjoy it. If you want to unsubscribe, send the word stop. Besides us, there was no one else in the house. About 10 minutes later, I got a call from the same number, but I didn't pick up. How suspicious is all this, and what should I do to protect myself? In my daughter's room, there's a Wi-Fi connected camera, baby. I immediately disconnected it from the network. There's an app where people track their trips to the bathroom with their friends. It sounds pretty strange, but you can even compete to see who poops more often, who has the most regular bowel movements, and things like that. As far as I understand, when a user invites friends, they receive messages suggesting they download the app. Maybe someone you know decided to play a prank like this and happened to time it perfectly. Be sure to change the passwords for all accounts linked to your home cameras and set ones that can't be easily guessed. I turned off the video baby monitor and replaced it with another one that doesn't connect to the internet at all. But I'm still puzzled as to how the sender knew both numbers right away, mine and my wife's. As far as I can remember, we've never said them out loud while at home. I work in cybersecurity and immediately decided that we wouldn't have any video baby monitors with a Wi-Fi connection in our home. I tried to find a sufficiently reliable model, but not a single manufacturer could properly guarantee the security of their device. Buying every camera on the market and testing each one myself for vulnerabilities was, of course, something I didn't want to do either. Video baby monitors have long had a very poor reputation when it comes to protection against hacking. In the end, we settled on an OLED monitor that tracks the child's heart rate and blood oxygen levels. Then when my son gets older and learns how to climb out of his crib on his own, we'll most likely install regular home security cameras. At least much more is generally known about their security and potential vulnerabilities. Free food. My wife and I have a rather questionable habit of feeding all kinds of animals. We have bird feeders hung all over our property. We leave cookies out for the squirrels, and in the backyard there's always food and water for any stray animals that might wander onto our property. Actually, that's what this whole story is about. Every evening between 5 and 6, I put out a fresh bowl of dry food and a large container of water. In the mornings, I go out, refill the water, and pour the leftover food into the yard. Usually there are only crumbs left by then. A week ago, my wife went out to take out the trash, and when she came back, she asked, "Did you forget to put out the food?" I went outside and saw that the bowl was indeed empty. Well, I'm retired now. Maybe I really did forget. I refilled the bowl and went back inside. The problem was that this kept happening every evening. For the whole next week, I made a point of checking the bowl before bed, and it turned out to be empty every single time. Long story short, it turned out that our new neighbor had noticed us leaving food out for stray animals, and apparently decided not to miss the chance to save a little on dog food. She would put a harness on our little dog, throw it over the fence between our yards, and slowly lower the dog down on a rope until it reached our porch. There, the dog would calmly eat all the food, after which she would pull it back up. When I finally caught her in the act, we had a brief conversation, if you can even call it that, given that I calmly asked a question while she screamed some incoherent nonsense in response. In the end, I called her landlord, who turned out to be an acquaintance of an acquaintance, and asked him to simply talk to her and explained that good neighbors don't behave that way. He listened to me and suddenly asked, like, does she have a dog? It turned out he doesn't rent to people with dogs. Cats are okay, but dogs aren't. Anyway, he came over in person and caught her with the dog right in the living room. Now she has 30 days to move out. Not exactly the most honorable thing I've ever done, of course, but how was I supposed to know it would end up exactly like this? This is a story about a friend of my grandparents. I was a teenager at the time, but given how it all ended, this story really stuck with me. After reading here about how all kinds of Karens get put in their place, I decided to share this story with you. Let's call my grandparents' friend William. They'd known him for a very long time. My grandma had known him since school, and my grandpa met him after they got married. In the 60s, my grandma worked as a manager at a 7-Eleven, and William would come there every day with his crew. It was the only gas station within a half-hour drive, so in that sleepy coastal town, everyone knew each other. One day, William was working by the water when he slipped, fell, and seriously injured his back. While he was recovering from surgery and was out of work, Grandma helped feed him. She'd send him food at her own expense every time his crew stopped by for a snack and to fill up on gas. She knew he'd rather go hungry than spend money his family needed. His grandfather helped him too, driving him to doctor's appointments since William couldn't drive for a while, and his frail wife simply couldn't manage it alone. William never forgot any of this. 20 years have passed. He sold his now highly successful business and became a multi-millionaire with literally tens of millions in his bank account. After that, he quickly cut ties with about 90% of the people in his circle. But he kept those who had supported him earlier close by. At the same time, he never moved out of the house where he lived even before he became rich. The only things he spent money on were traveling with his wife and buying a fairly large amount of forest land surrounding his property. If you didn't know him, you'd mistake him for an ordinary hard worker. You'd never guess he had tens of millions. In the 90s, after his wife's death, William decided to take up a new hobby. Since he lived outside the city, he set up a sawmill and woodworking shop on his property with all the proper permits as required. The saws were housed in a large enclosed building in the middle of his land, so it would seem he wasn't bothering anyone, but that wasn't the case. The family that owned the forest behind his property sold the land to developers. That's how a new upscale gated community came to be, the first in the area. And all sorts of Chads and Karens immediately started moving in, mostly from the north, having relocated south for the better weather and proximity to the ocean. Very quickly they took a dislike to a small business on the other side of their 3-meter wall. They claimed it didn't fit the image of their community, a community to which he had absolutely no connection whatsoever. So what did they do? They sued him. They didn't even try to talk to him first. They just went straight to court. William got really angry. He was a typical coastal redneck, and there was no way he was going to let those damn Yankees tell him what to do on his own land, which, by the way, wasn't within city limits and wasn't part of any HOA. In response, he provided professional noise measurements showing that some of the teens' cars in the neighborhood generated more background noise than his small workshop. But no, the residents just kept pouring money into their lawyers to drag out the lawsuit. Essentially, their strategy was to bankrupt him. Even their lawyers, who weren't from the area, told William's attorney outright that he should advise his client to close the workshop. Otherwise, they'd simply bankrupt him with endless legal fees. Because his house looked so modest, neither the neighbors nor their lawyers had any idea that he was actually richer than almost all of them combined. To them, he was just an old guy driving around in a beat-up 80s pickup truck, wearing Dickies jeans and a work shirt, who lived in a rather modest house, especially compared to their huge McMansions. When his lawyer relayed this conversation to him, William completely lost it. I still remember how he screeched into my parents' yard in his old work pickup, cursing and yelling even before he stepped into the house. Why did he come to us? Because my grandmother, a saint of a woman, was considered one of the most generous people until you crossed her. The moment you offended her or someone close to her, she turned into one of the most vindictive and calculating people in the area. And that's no exaggeration. Her ability to exact revenge cold-bloodedly and ingeniously was almost legendary among the locals. That's why William came to her for advice. We kids weren't allowed in on that conversation. But later I heard the adults discussing how he'd hired several private investigators to dig up dirt. And not just on one person, but on dozens of residents in that neighborhood who were involved in the ISK. And as it turned out, there was plenty to dig up. I still remember the excitement with which he told my grandparents about it a few months later. He was a man in his 60s, yet he was as happy as a child on Christmas morning. Why? Because upon learning what his private investigators had uncovered, he started calling a few of his high ranking contacts. The result was simple. The lawsuit fell apart and a whole slew of violations came to light, but from what the adults were discussing, the following stood out in my memory. Several people had accumulated child support debts. William kindly provided their former partners with their current addresses and employment information so they could collect the payments. In addition, the tax authorities took an interest in several residents and their neighbors. And finally, one family ended up going to jail because detectives discovered they were dealing in illegal substances. Photos of the drug deals were handed over to the sheriff. The morale of the story: never anger a rich red. Thanks so much for watching. In the comments below the video, let me know which of these stories impressed you the most. For me, of course, it's the one about William. Am I wrong for telling my perfectionist sister-in-law that she'll ruin her child's life if she doesn't change? I'm 26 and my sister-in-law is 32. We've been working together at the same organization for several years now. When I first started here, we were often called together for various meetings, training sessions, and team building activities. This included taking all kinds of personality tests. About 2 months ago, she and I were assigned to the department that handles guest check-in and room assignments. Before that, we had hardly ever worked side by side. I knew even before that she was the kind of person who needs everything to be perfect, but I had no idea just how extreme it was. The problem started almost immediately, just last week. She was constantly finding something to nitpick about. Sometimes the sheet wasn't folded right, sometimes the shoes weren't lined up straight enough, or some other minor detail was wrong. No matter what I did, she always had a reason to criticize me. I'm a pretty laid back person and don't usually get hung up on things like that, so at first I just ignored it. But over time, her constant nitpicking started to really get on my nerves. The day before yesterday, I was getting the guest room ready for the CEO of our organization. We've known each other for a long time and get along pretty well. I had just finished when my sister-in-law walked in and immediately started pointing out flaws. It turned out that the bedspread was hanging down a little more on one side of the bed than the other. It was so slight that it was barely noticeable. Then she didn't like the air freshener I'd used. In her opinion, the scent was too girly. And it went on like that. She literally went through the entire room point by point, listing every little thing that didn't match her idea of perfection. And she spoke as if these standards were mandatory for everyone, even though she'd come up with them entirely on her own. Now she's pregnant too. And to be honest, I think that's only intensified her usual tendency to control everything and consider her opinion the only correct one. My brother, her husband, by the way, is just as much of a crazy perfectionist. So in that regard, they're a perfect match. I tried to calmly explain my point of view and at least smooth things over a bit, but she kept cutting me off and raising her voice. At some point, I couldn't take it anymore and said what had been on my mind for a long time. I said that if she didn't learn to manage her drive for perfection, she'd ruin her own child's life, that the child would grow up feeling like he'd never measure up to her expectations, that he'd constantly feel inadequate and live in fear of disappointing his mother again, and that such an atmosphere could very well leave behind serious psychological trauma. After that, she burst into tears and claimed that I didn't understand anything, but the fact is she's only been pregnant for a month and I've been working with her for 2 months already. She's been like this from the very beginning. What's more, some mutual acquaintances of ours who've also dealt with her at work have told similar stories. According to them, she regularly demands the impossible from those around her and sets standards that practically no one is capable of meeting. So I'm to blame for voicing all of this to her. I don't think I said it to hurt her or insult her. I'm just genuinely worried about the child who will soon be joining our family. No, that's not true. You said that because she gotten on your nerves with her nitpicking about your work. At that moment, you weren't thinking about the child at all. And don't pretend you are motivated by concern for the child. You crossed the line. That was a personal attack. And when you said it, it wasn't out of kindness or genuine concern. So in this case, you're both idiots. She definitely needs to tone down her perfectionism a bit. But personally, I think you come across worse in this situation. Edited. I thought about it some more and came to a different conclusion. You're still at fault. This is a workplace. If you're unhappy with a coworker's behavior, you discuss the issue with them directly. If that doesn't help, you go to your manager. But you can't speculate about her pregnancy or what kind of parent she'll be in the future. That's absolutely unacceptable behavior. You work in guest reception and accommodations. Improperly folded sheets aren't nitpicking or a sign of perfectionism. For your job, it's literally part of your job description. The hospitality industry is incredibly detail oriented. Outward perfection is extremely important here because it helps conceal any shortcomings that might remain behind the scenes. Perhaps you should consider a career change. What you said to her was simply cruel and clearly went far beyond what is acceptable. Am I a jerk just because I sang along too loudly at a concert? I'm 31 years old. Recently, I went to a Tame Impala concert with my best friend. We had seats in the seated section at the back of the hall, but practically everyone around us was standing anyway. We danced, sang along to our favorite songs, and just enjoyed the concert. I'd had a couple of cocktails, so maybe I was a little louder than usual, but I wasn't shouting random things or chatting during the performance. I was just singing along with the band. At one point, the girl sitting next to me switched seats with her boyfriend. At the time, it seemed to me that maybe I was annoying her in some way. So after that, I started paying closer attention to my behavior. And when the concert ended, she came up to me and said I was singing too loudly. And because of me, she wasn't able to fully enjoy the performance. I was completely flustered and could only apologize. Now I feel really awkward. I keep replaying the situation in my head and wondering if I ruined the concert not just for her, but for the other people around me too. Although nobody said anything to me during the performance itself. Just a quick note, some background. I go to concerts about once or twice a week on average, and here's what I have to say. No one buys a concert ticket just to listen to some random karaoke enthusiast belting it out at the top of their lungs right next to them. That's infuriating no matter what. If the artist deliberately points the microphone toward the audience, then yes, they want to hear the crowd. If they're playing the band's biggest hit, maybe the artist wants to hear the audience sing along, but the rest of the time, let the musician do their job. People came to listen to the performer, not you. It's like going to a restaurant and climbing behind the counter yourself to slice your own meat, or stopping your car in the middle of the road to change the oil yourself, or pushing the cashier aside at the supermarket and saying, wait, let me serve myself. Thanks, sir. That's ridiculous, isn't it? So at concerts, don't try to turn the performance into your own karaoke show. And while we're at it, here's another request. Don't come to concerts just to chat with your friends. If you want to chat, head to the bar, the lounge, or outside. Show respect both to the artists and to the people who paid to hear them perform. A friend asked to hold her child's birthday party at my house, but she didn't even invite me to it. My friend wanted to celebrate her child's birthday in our event room. She said it was a special occasion for the little one. I asked why she couldn't hold the party at her own home, and she replied that our place was better suited for children. I told her right away that I'd feel more comfortable if she chose a different venue, such as a rented event space. A few weeks later, she brought up the topic again and said that all the other options were either too expensive or inconveniently located, and she asked once more if we could host the party at our place. Essentially, if she used our space, she would save hundreds of dollars on rent. In the end, I agreed, but with a few conditions: a limited number of guests, sticking to the reserved time slot, and that she greet her guests herself in the lobby. I had to spell this out separately because a year earlier we'd already hosted a big party for her, and that time everything went horribly wrong. There ended up being far more guests than planned. And instead of relaxing, my partner and I spent the entire evening organizing, greeting people who were constantly late, keeping an eye on the guests, coordinating games, helping with preparations, and then cleaning up afterward. In the end, we barely got to enjoy the party ourselves. 2 weeks before the birthday, she suddenly announced that she wanted to push the start time back by an hour because the child's sleep schedule had changed. It also turned out that she had already invited more people than we'd agreed on, even before I'd finally agreed to the whole thing. According to her, it would now be awkward to exclude anyone from the guest list. Plus, all the grandparents absolutely had to come. I told her I wasn't going to cancel the reservation and suggested we stick with the original time after all. In the end, she herself said it would be better to just cancel the party at our place altogether because I was making too much of a fuss. Even though I was actually trying to find a compromise, she was the one who didn't want to give in on anything. At the same time, she didn't even offer to compensate us in any way for our time and effort, just to cover the cost of the room reservation, which our management company charges us for anyway. By the way, it was exactly the same last time. Later, I found out on social media that the birthday party did take place after all. It's just that my partner and I weren't even invited. And that really hurt my feelings. It felt like we were only needed as a free venue for parties and as the people who would organize everything. We live in an expensive residential complex with plenty of amenities near the city center. And now it seems more and more to me that she was just taking advantage of this to impress her friends. At the same time, we never felt like guests at these parties because we had to keep an eye on everything that was going on and handle the organization the whole time. Earlier this year, by the way, she even asked if she could use one of our rooms for her own birthday party, but then changed her mind because she didn't want to clean up after the party herself. Edited. Thanks to everyone for the advice. It really was important for me to hear an outside perspective. I probably should have learned to say no to her right after the first party, but I find that hard to do, especially when it comes to longtime friends. I'm actually trying to work on that. I hesitated for a long time about whether I should even post about this situation here and what to do with this friendship going forward, but it seems the majority opinion is pretty clear. Update. 3 days after that post, I messaged this friend and told her that I was really upset and hurt to find out that the party had gone ahead after all, and my partner and I weren't even invited. I expected her to at least acknowledge my feelings and apologize, but instead, she replied that she was a little offended by my message. According to her, she was the one who had to cancel the party at our place at the last minute. After that, it was awkward to explain to the guests that the party was being rescheduled for another date because she hadn't been able to book her own event room for that same date. Yes, as it turned out, she actually had her own party room in her apartment complex all along, but she still wanted to use ours because it was supposedly better suited for children. She even complained that because of this, she had to hold the party on a different day. Then she said she hadn't invited my partner and me because she assumed I'd be working on the day the party was rescheduled. I replied that I actually had the day off. That's when I finally lost it. I told her straight out that ever since we moved into our current home over a year ago, she's been acting extremely arrogant and entitled. She's constantly trying to get us to let her and her family come over so they can take advantage of the amenities in our apartment complex. I reminded her that we'd already thrown a huge party for her last year and that I'd taken the initiative many times myself to help her in situations where her other friends didn't pitch in at all. And I did all this not for any personal gain, but simply because I wanted to support my friend during a difficult time in her life. I told her that it was very selfish of her to constantly demand things from me, first using our home and amenities, then trying to throw her birthday party at our place, and then her child's birthday party as well. At the same time, I never asked her for anything like that for myself. And yes, she never offered anything like that on her own. I told her straight out that she should be ashamed of taking advantage of someone she calls a friend, and that she should try to put herself in my shoes at least once. She also remembered that we had to cancel the reservation solely because of her, because she didn't want to slightly adjust her child's nap time just once in the entire year, and yet she couldn't care less about the plans of everyone else she'd already invited. I told her I was shocked by how irresponsible she was and that she hadn't even apologized properly. In response, she sent a short message: "Sorry, I didn't realize how much trouble I'd caused you," and then she immediately asked if we could just let it go. And that was it. Lacking any self-respect, I replied that I no longer wanted to be friends with her. She simply read my message and didn't respond. My mom thinks she has the right to move back in with us after her boyfriend dumped her. I'm 21 and my mom is 41. She wants to move back in with me and my brothers and sisters. I'll try to explain the situation briefly. In November 2020, she and my stepdad got divorced because he found out about her messages with another man. It was all very difficult. That same night he left the house, and for several months we heard almost nothing from him, and honestly I don't blame him for that. You say he was cheated on. He needed time to process and come to terms with everything. Even so, he still helps and supports us, the kids. I call him my stepdad just so you can understand the whole story. But to me, he's always been a real dad. My biological father was practically absent from my life, but my stepdad took me in as his own when I was very young. So he's my dad. We have a very close relationship and I love him very much. He's always treated me like his own child. After the divorce, mom moved in with that same man and left the four of us kids at home, effectively without parents. It's been that way ever since. After she moved out, she started treating us terribly. She acted as if we were a burden to her. Sometimes she even pretended we didn't exist, while at the same time playing the role of the perfect mom for her new boyfriend's kids. My older brother and I had to take everything upon ourselves and look after our younger siblings. I was there to help him out until I turned 18. When my mother left, all she said was, "There are enough of you that you can take care of each other." And she added, when you get older and have kids of your own, you'll understand everything. Personally, I can't imagine how anyone could abandon their own children for some abuser, but I guess that's just me. Sarcasm. Sometimes she'd come back, but only for a day or two at most, to pick up her things or because they'd had another fight, and then she'd leave again to be with him. Even though he lives 3 or 4 hours drive away from us, a few months ago we had a huge fight. She and that jerk had broken up again. He kicked her out of the house yet again, and she started playing on our sympathy, saying that kids always need their mom and all that. That's when I told her something like this: "Did you care about that 5 years ago when you abandoned us, saying we'd understand everything when we grew up? We've grown up and we still don't understand how a mother could do that to her own children." After that, she flew into a rage and went on and on. She said some terrible things to me and my brothers and sisters, things no mother should ever say to her children. I don't want to repeat any of it. In the end, she moved in with our grandparents and started bombarding me and my older brother with messages, trying to manipulate us and make us feel sorry for her. It got to the point where even our grandparents told us to block her. But as you might guess, a few days later, she went back to her boyfriend. After that, my older brother filed a lawsuit against her to gain custody of the younger children and the rights to the house. They told her straight out, either she voluntarily transfers ownership of the house and gives up custody, or everything she's done over the years will be revealed in court. Yes, blackmail is wrong, I get that. But it worked. Mom transferred ownership of the house to her oldest child, handed over custody, and officially declared herself unfit to be a parent. That was the end of it, but now she and that guy have broken up for good. At least that's what she says. He threw out all her stuff. She changed her phone number and called my older brother, asking him to give her back her room in the house. She said they'd never abandon us again. The problem is that we'd given her room to our youngest sister a long time ago, and she really likes having her own space. So, of course, we said no. After that, she instantly played the victim and started turning everything against us. She said we were cruel, that she spent her whole life doing everything for the kids, and that Dad had turned us against her. We replied that Dad hasn't mentioned her in a long time unless we bring her up ourselves. Then she lost her temper again and started calling us ungrateful brats. She said we should actually be thanking her for leaving us the house and not kicking us out onto the street, even though that's supposedly what she wanted. And then she started demanding that we let her move back in. She said she wouldn't take no for an answer because she raised us. She's still our mother, and she has the final say. We warned her that if she tried anything, we'd call the police, but it doesn't seem like that stopped her. She's planning to come tomorrow and try to move back in, because her last message was, "Let's talk in person, see you soon, I love you." And to be honest, we have no idea what to do if she actually shows up. I really hope it doesn't come to today. Following numerous pieces of advice, we've already changed the locks, edited. Good morning. Honestly, I didn't expect the post to get this much attention at all. I just wrote it and went to sleep. This morning I dropped the younger kids off at school, and now I'm at work until noon. My older brother stayed home in case my mother does show up this morning. We decided to take turns keeping watch rather than having someone there just in the morning or just in the afternoon, so the house wouldn't be left empty. We also reached out to my uncle and aunt on my dad's side so we'd have support if anything happens. And a huge thank you to everyone for your kind words and support and advice. My sister, who I don't talk to at all, has decided to move into my new apartment and kick out my roommate. My sister and I have had a terrible relationship for a long time. To make a long story short, she, my brother, and I were adopted. We aren't biologically related, and at some point she started putting intense pressure on us to reconnect with our biological families. But our biological relatives are, to put it mildly, very strange people, and they have absolutely no connection to her at all. As a result, my brother and I cut off contact with her. Like, it's a long story. I don't want to get into it right now. But it's important to understand that if you don't do everything the way my sister wants, she starts deliberately looking for ways to hurt you. So what did she come up with to get back at me? She slept with my boyfriend at the time, now my ex, of course. And then she even started rubbing it to my face. What a blast. Awesome, just amazing. Thanks a million, sis. But then things really turned into a circus. My brother and I also stopped talking to our parents because they're constantly covering for that little, it was mom's birthday recently, and my brother and I weren't there, of course, and Mother's Day is coming up too. So mom started feeling sorry for herself and making a big scene. Well, to be honest, I don't care. After all, she has her beloved little daughter who actually hates her, so let them figure it out on their own. So my cousin was at mom's party, and afterward he told me what my sister had said there. My three best friends and I had been planning to rent an apartment together for a long time, and we just recently moved in. The apartment is in the city where we grew up, and I'm absolutely thrilled about it. But now it turns out that my sister is tired of living with our parents for free in the suburbs, so she's decided to move in with me, taking the place of one of my roommates, and have our parents pay her rent. Just to remind you, we haven't even spoken to each other in several months. The last time we spoke, she showed me photos of herself lying naked in bed with my boyfriend while he slept next to her, and she had the most disgusting, smug look on her face. But now, for some reason, she's decided she's gonna live with me. What the hell? The funniest part is she's already picked which roommate she's gonna replace. In her opinion, one of my friends shouldn't live in the apartment because he's a guy, and the apartment should be for girls only. On top of that, she even managed to spout some homophobic nonsense. So once again, we're not on speaking terms at all. I hate her. She slept with my boyfriend and leaked my contact info to my crazy biological family. Because of her antics, I stopped talking to my parents, but at the same time, she somehow decided that she's gonna live with me now because she felt like moving to the city. And she also decided that my best friend from childhood needs to be kicked out of the apartment because he's a guy, and she's supposedly uncomfortable living with a man. Yeah, right? A brazen little woman tried to pull off a sneaky scheme. About 5 years ago, I was working in the flooring department at Lowe's. I'd been discharged from the army about half a year earlier. Everything was official and I'd had no issues with my service. This detail will come into play a little later. I hadn't been working there very long at that point, so I was far from knowing everything about flooring and certainly didn't consider myself an expert. But there was one thing I'd learned for sure. You must never give customers the folders with the measurements for installing the floor. This was explained to us in great detail both during the training modules and by the manager personally. The point was that Lowe's often sent contractors out for free to take measurements and prepare estimates. If a customer received these measurements, they could simply take them to another store and order installation at a lower price. Naturally, the company didn't want that to happen. And then one day, the very epitome of a brazen customer showed up there with her quiet, meek husband. At that moment, I was simultaneously answering calls and helping customers at the department counter. She comes up and says that she'd recently had measurements taken and now she wants to take the folder home. I calmly but firmly explained that according to store policy, we couldn't give these documents to customers, and she immediately started making a scene. These are my measurements. They were taken in my house, so they belong to me. I replied that I could call the manager so he could explain the store policy in more detail and confirm what I was saying. But after that, she literally started getting in my face, invading my personal space and yelling, "Why do you need to call the manager? Why do you even need a manager? You're new here. Are you stupid?" You see, after the army, people yelling in my face stopped getting to me at all. I'd gotten used to it. But when she called me stupid, that was a whole different story. I usually don't like to play the veteran card, but I wasn't about to let this woman walk all over me either. Especially since I'd finally landed a job where I wasn't obligated to put up with that kind of treatment. The manager was busy at the time and didn't answer. I hung up and said very calmly, "Ma'am, I was a sergeant in the army. I'm not some 18-year-old kid you can boss around, and just so you understand, I don't desperately need this job. And I certainly don't need you standing there yelling in my face, calling me stupid. But I'd be happy to walk with you to the front desk, and we'll sort everything out together through the manager. I'm here to help you, so tell me, how exactly can I help you? She snorted, started swearing even louder and making a scene, then grabbed her husband's bag and headed for the customer service desk. I took the folder with the measurements, and the people standing in line began apologizing to me on her behalf. My goodness, we feel for you having to deal with this. I just shrugged, thanked them for their patience, and said I'd be right back. Then I walked as slowly as possible to the administration desk. By the time I got there, this woman was already complaining loudly to a service representative. My manager appeared immediately and asked what on earth was going on. I simply held up the folder and said calmly, "She's trying to take the documents out." My manager is a tall, sturdy woman who doesn't let anyone walk all over her. She immediately asked, "Who exactly?" I nodded toward the customer. The manager reached out for the folder and said, "Whoa, all right, thank you. You can go back to your department." I handed her the folder with great pleasure and calmly walked back to my desk. As I was leaving, I heard the client literally fly into a hysterical fit. "Blah, blah, blah, I'm gonna call headquarters. Do you even know who I am? Blah, blah, blah." But I just kept walking with a completely calm expression, fully aware that I'd done everything right. She didn't get what she wanted. She didn't walk all over me. I didn't lose my job. And no one ever even mentioned that situation again. It's not worth getting a veteran in the service industry riled up, or any service employee for that matter.